mean, but the founder was an engineer.
Are people downstairs, I wonder?
I don't think so. I should load up messages though, because
You got like 5 messages?
Yeah.
I'll just check.
Ooh, yes, there are people trying to get into the meetup. The door must be locked.
Everywhere you go, Jacobs. You know, go to La Jolla. There's like a free, arts gallery, right?
Shell.
But he's also emo because he came from the kind of like the university. That's why. And then a lot of stuff. And you see the people. My parents, they were my mom, she had PhD. Well, that was the scripts. PhD in physics. My mom, she had was a professor here. Oh yeah.
I had my text messages not it's going to my thing, but I was meant to load up text messages on the web, but I didn't have it open. But here it is. We're good.
It's on my Chromebook, but that's probably harder to make work than just getting a slideshow.
Yeah, probably. Well, I mean, if it has HDMI, you should be okay.
I brought something that's like one of those dongles.
Yeah, I want those dongles.
I tried plugging it to my
There's food, by the way, in the back. You get food for everybody. The only thing, Jay.
Let me take my screen down.
Yeah, can I actually get you to leave the laptop though? Like unplug it.
Sure. Unplug it. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, we're gonna close that soon. But we have to lock the door at a time. So can you go to the drive, the Google Drive, and there's like an introductions document in there? Oh yeah. I'm gonna just read off of that when I do introductions. I'll check the door, and I'm gonna get some food.
No, I think we should be okay.
What time are we starting at? Like 5-10 after?
Yeah, 5-10 after. So
all right. Excuse me, everyone. We're going to be getting started in about 5 minutes. So if you haven't gotten food yet, please do. The food is sponsored by Microsoft, and everything is both vegan and gluten-free. I know it says chicken. It's not chicken. It's plumeria Thai chicken.
Chicken substitute.
Exactly. It's actually good though.
Better chicken.
It's there. It's really good. And we also got eggplant as well, which the eggplant was really good.
Yeah.
I think I saw you last time on the screen.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Glad to see you're feeling better. Family's feeling better too, right?
Yeah. We had another bout. My daughter got sick over the weekend, but
It's
the season.
It's kids.
Yeah, it's kids.
This is
Like
kids.
other kids.
This is 18 years apparently.
Actually, just leave the kids sleeping in quarantine bubbles.
Oh man, if I could.
That way they
It'd just be quiet in the house then.
don't come home from school right into the pod.
Don't mind if I take a picture of you?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. You guys are welcome here all the time.
Awesome.
We got ping pong too.
I need to figure out what we're gonna do because right now I think I don't know when the Qualcomm deal wraps up, but I think once that happens we'll have to figure it out. And then
What do you mean the Qualcomm deal was like previous?
so we've been meeting at Qualcomm for a while, and the auditorium that they normally let us use has been under repair. We didn't do it, but so we haven't been able to meet for the last 2 months, which I'm like, yo, you're Qualcomm, your repair should not take 2 months, especially since the last time. I mean, unless a tree went through the building or something
Yeah, I know.
should be fine. But also, I'm pretty sure our contract with them, or not contract, but our sponsorship deal with them was supposed to end, I think, in March. So now we're
Well, we could also expand this here. We're trying to recreate kind of the old AI center here.
yeah,
We're trying to create a community, and you guys are welcome.
doing what we can. We gotta get people back in the idea. I'm glad that we have some students here because students
Peruvian.
were like surprisingly the largest group of folks.
I gotta take a phone call. I'll be right back.
Sure.
Yeah.
We'll be
pleasure meeting.
starting soon. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let me know. Is the thing done?
15, 20.
Everything done?
We good to go?
We're good.
You got it? You want me to get it? You got it? Oh, okay, you can do it.
Maybe let me just switch
Oh,
over
yeah.
the stream so that we're the stream is streaming. Should be able to just switch it over to full camera. All right, do it.
I mean, I'm over here talking like right in front of the mic. I'm sure they're enjoying that.
It's fine.
Which actually started to the joy of listening to the live cast. You just hear audio for like the first 10, 15 minutes. And it's just like,
Yeah, you know,
I
whatever.
can't get this working.
It's not working. Shut up,
That's
dude.
totally. Actually, I wasn't even planning to get started for like 2 or 3 more minutes. So, yeah. But yeah, I know that the audio is running because I try to get the levels just right. Although obviously there have been problems with that, like a bunch of times. I think I nailed it this time. I'll find out. It was good last time, levels wise, but one of the channels was dead, the right channel. So it was left channel only audio. And did I go back and fix it? No, I did not for that video, but I hope to have fixed it for this time.
It's good. It makes it more authentic.
It does. We've had audio problems every time, but I think I nailed it.
I've given, 5 talks and none of them have been able to go up because there's always something wrong with Jay's audio.
They recorded most of them. At least half. But the levels were bad on some of them.
So the audio streaming is bad, or
No, the streaming audio was much better than,
by the way,
than the mic
We
audio.
have speakers. Who are those speakers? Okay. HDMI.
We'll see.
USB-C. Okay.
I've got some look at it.
I'm sure that'll work. Who are the other speakers? I think I saw Jeremy in the back.
Yeah.
We had 4 speakers. Emily,
Nishat.
and 3.
He might not be here yet.
Okay. Do I need to go down and wait?
No, it's okay. I mean, if he doesn't show up, the meetup ends early.
There's that.
Unless I keep on talking.
Yeah. I mean, we'll find out who he is. We should get started though. I mean, the video's on. What? You scan the QR code by the door. That's how you get on the Wi-Fi. I don't actually know what the password is. I can get it for you when I'm at my laptop, but I can't get it for you right now. Anyway, welcome to San Diego Python. You're in the right place. Thank you for coming. I'm David. I'm one of the co-organizers of the meetup. Jay, also one of the organizers. Jeremy, also one of the organizers. Thank you. Everybody's helping out and wrangling speakers, getting food, setting up, all those kinds of things. Before we dive into talks and stuff like that, I'm going to go through like some thanks and some announcements and some stuff like that. Firstly, I want to thank Ansir Cowork. That's where you are. We were hosted at Ansir when San Diego Python was getting started over 10 years ago, and we're back now. Kalan, do you want to say a few nice words about Ansir?
Yeah. So thank you for showing up here. Parking can be a little tough in the Convoy district. Unfortunately, we have some parking in the back, and we have our co-working space here. It's small, one of the smaller spaces in San Diego, but we have fun, and it's definitely a community, and we have some great things here. So if you're a founder or a developer, you just want to get away from your house or maybe your office and work elsewhere, this is the place to be. We have some really great food options as well around here. The Convoy Food District is pretty awesome. So if you do want to join, you can go to ansirsd.com. I think we have a 50% off first month, so it's Python 50. And I want to make one announcement. So there's an event coming up called March Mingle, and if you haven't heard of it, we were before the lockdowns the largest tech networking event in San Diego, and basically it's just getting together. It's getting away from the user groups and the presentations. No offense to anybody, and just having fun and just meeting others in the tech community. So that's March. It's marchmingle.com, and it'll be March 30th at the Prado event space in Belleville Park. So there's plenty of parking there.
That's where it's going to be.
Yeah,
Nice.
So we'll talk more about that later.
That's
All right,
awesome.
That's it. Thank you.
Sweet. I'm stoked about that. I haven't been to March Mingle in a few years, so pretty cool. I also want to thank Microsoft for sponsoring the food, which is great. Jay, do you want to say a word or two? Or Yeah. As I mentioned before, hi, I'm Jay. I'm one of the organizers here. I'm also an advocate for Microsoft. We talk about Azure. If you do Azure things, come talk to me. If you're interested in Azure things, come talk to me. If you want to not talk about those things and just maybe talk about Python instead, you can also still come talk to me. That's fine. That's what we do. Enjoy the food. The food is vegan friendly. It is also gluten free. So for those with any dietary restrictions, you should be able to enjoy as much as everyone else. And yeah, we're gonna be at PyCon and doing a bunch of stuff, and hope you'll come and hang out with us.
Cool. Awesome. We have a Saturday meetup for San Diego Python. It's different from this. There's not usually not speakers lined up or anything like that. It's more of it's virtual still. Although I think they're hoping to get back online in person in a few weeks or months or something.
There's logistics.
There's logistics. I understand. I don't usually organize the Saturday group, so yeah. Anyway, check the meetup page. It will be up to date. There's also an upcoming workshop. It's going to be here actually on April 1st. It's Mario Munoz who runs the Inland Empire Python group. No, am I wrong?
I mean, Mario Munoz is a developer that's in Inland Empire. I don't think he runs the meetup.
Oh, okay, I was wrong.
He does run Python by night. If you've seen any of the blog posts about how do you learn Python when it's not your day job, he actually was able to turn that into some really good talks. One at PyCon last year, one at DjangoCon back in October, and he is preparing for a workshop that he's going to be giving at PyCon. And asked if San Diego Python would like to get a free trial run of it. So if you're interested in running fast API with HTMX and Tailwind CSS, so building a full-scale web application with no npm install anything, that makes me happy because me and JavaScript fight a lot. But if you're interested in that, April 1st here at 10 a.m. It's going to be 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. There won't be food, I'm sorry, but maybe we'll go down Convoy and get some good food afterwards.
You don't even npm install HTMX or Tailwind?
No,
or just two.
So
NPM installs?
Tailwind CSS, there's a Python module, so you just pip install it.
Okay.
And HTMX, you can just use the
one file,
the one from the cloud.
Yeah. All right. So that's April 1st. Check the meetup page; it'll be up there. Cool. A couple other announcements. The website and code of conduct are on the website, which is sandiegopython.org. That's our website. Has links to all of our stuff. Our YouTube channel, which this meetup is being streamed to. It's got a link to our Discord, which also has a jobs channel if you're looking for a job. Because I'm gonna open the floor up for jobs here, but there's 25 people in the room. The Discord has a couple hundred people on it, so it's much better if you're trying to reach a wider audience or if you're trying to receive from a wider audience of companies. If anybody's company is hiring though today and you want to just give a brief shout out about your company and what the position's for, go ahead. Anybody? No? All right. Check the jobs channel on the Discord, and you can join the Discord off of the website because the link is long and confusing. Couple conferences that are coming up. The SoCal Linux Expo is coming up. It's March 9th to 12th. It's in Pasadena. What?
I'm speaking.
You're speaking.
Yeah,
all right.
I'll be there.
Python WebConf is virtual. It's going to be March 13th to 17th. So if you do Python stuff on the web, that's a conference. PyCascades is going to be in person in Vancouver, British Columbia, March 18th to 20th. That's kind of the unofficial San Diego conference randomly. I know that it's in British Columbia, which is far from here. But anytime, I've been to that conference a couple times. I'm not going this year. And every time I go, I'm like, there's as many San Diego people as there are people locals here, I feel. Anyway, PyTexas is coming up. That's April 1st to 2nd in Austin. And PyCon US is April 19th to 27th. Some of those days are tutorials and sprints and stuff. And that's in Salt Lake City. Yeah. I actually can't make that. It goes over the conference day is my daughter's birthday. Anyway.
PyData Seattle is the fall. It's the 25th. So it's the last day. The second day of sprints is the first day of PyData Seattle. So if you can't go to PyCon, you can't go to Salt Lake, but you can go to Seattle. That's an option too. Also, most of those conferences do have a virtual component. Python Web Conference is an all virtual event. It's a week long, but it's half days. So if you're working and you just want to have some videos playing in the background, or take some time and watch those and then get your work done in the breaks, you can do that as well. If you are interested in registering for Python Web Conference and you haven't yet, come see me. I have a discount code, so I can get you 20% off. It's 15.
I think it is
Pretty sure it's 15.
You said 15 last month, so.
Okay, so then it's 15.
Awesome. I'm also always looking for speakers, all skill levels. We have like you can sign up to be a speaker. You don't have to sign up for the next month. You can sign up for 2 months from now, or whatever you need to do to motivate yourself to prepare a talk. Do it. The sign up link is also on the website, sandiegopython.org, or you can go to pysd.io/talk and sign up. It's just a Google form, but we're always looking for talks, like whether it's on robotics, entry-level Python, advanced NumPy. Please speak. That's what keeps the meetup going.
This is the last time I'm butting in. I've spoken 5 months in a row, always because we've needed another speaker. If I speak again, it's going to be on how to give a talk. And you're going to get that same talk until we get people signing up. You've been warned.
I'm the speaker of last resort, so I'm actually glad that Jay's giving talks rather than me. So it's better. I'm happy he does it. I also want to thank, we have one more sponsor who I wanted to thank, and they have a giveaway. This is JFrog. They've been a fantastic sponsor to us. They literally sent me like a box of swag February 2020. Like, they're like, give it out at your March 2020 meetup, which was not held until October 2022. But I was shipping out like little like giveaways to people who attended our virtual meetup. They've been awesome. They've been fantastic. They have a product that's like a DevOps platform for continuous releases. Like if you need a PyPI inside your company firewall, they are the product for that. That is their. I mean, it does a bunch more than that, but that's one of the things that it does. It does the same thing for like Maven and all the other languages and stuff like that. They don't care. But if you're here for Python, you need a PyPI inside your company firewall. Anyway, I have a giveaway from them. This is an Adafruit PyPortal. It's like a little circuit-powered programmable display. It has like an LCD on it. I think somebody here. I'm going to pressure people who win to give lightning talks. So please give a lightning talk if you win one of these. Just a little bit of fun pressure. And I have like a list of people whose names I drew before, like basically off of the meetup RSVPs. I'm just going to go down the list, and if you're here, you won, and if you're not, too bad. Better luck next time. So John Berber, are you here? Nope. Could have won. Zekun Wang. All right.
I got
you.
Lots of pranks with that.
All right, yeah. Please you can sign up for a lightning talk for next month or 2 months from now. Little bit of fun pressure. That's all for the announcements. Thank you for sitting through 10 minutes of me talking. Nikolaj is our first speaker. Nikolaj Baer is going to talk to us about Meals Count, a Python volunteer project in the wild. I'll let you take it away. Here's the stuff. Hopefully this is the dongle that you need. This is the mic. You don't need to attach it. Just talk generally, vaguely towards the mic.
Cool. All right.
Oh, is the TV on? Oh, that's true.
I think it turned itself off.
Got it. Yeah.
It's also questionable whether or not this is the iPad or the Chromebook I let my daughter borrow for a little while while she's biking to school, and so as a result, the display doesn't quite. Well, it's got some cracks and some.
Up, though. Yeah.
Oh, sweet. There we go. Well, that answers that question. I was curious.
See if we can get the presentation.
Yeah, I think if a mirror displays, that will do it here somewhere in Chromebook land.
There you go.
Sweet. All right. Cool. All right. Sounds good. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Nikolaj. So I'm going to talk today about Meals Count. This came up because on Saturday I was at that really cool online virtual meetup asking questions about further iteration on this project. And I think Jeremy, who actually was involved early on in the prototyping of this project years ago, suggested I come and give a talk about it. So it says Python in it, but it's actually going to be a lot about what Meals Count about, is like policy optimization and sort of more about the project and the background of it, which is kind of interesting because it's been around for 4 years or so. So it's going to be kind of more about my experiments and adventures in government coding, which is maybe not as boring as it sounds. Well, maybe we'll see. All right, so it ties back to meals count is actually tied into the USDA community eligibility provision. And so that's a specific piece of legislation as part of the Healthy, Hungry, Free Kids Act of 2010, which was Michelle Obama's kind of signature thing that she did way back in 2000 to do. So basically, what it's all about is about schools that it's a way of funding that encourages schools to give free meals to everyone. And there's no lunch, there's no paperwork, and they just get like free breakfast and lunch and everything like that. Again, this was like a big deal back in the day because it's like, wow, we'll eliminate the stigma of free lunch. As you guys know, there's some things that happened in the meantime that gave everyone free lunch and breakfast, which is basically the pandemic, which factors into all this. So basically, how the legislation worked is that school districts had multiple funding options to get money from the government. So it turns out like there's not just like one way that schools get money for paying for meals. They can like they have to, the districts have to go find which funding mechanism they want to go, which is a lot more market driven than I realized. And so the school has to qualify for this specific program. They have to submit a group of schools, and they've got some rules in here. I'm not going to go through all details. I'll try to keep this short, but basically there's a formula based upon the number of disadvantaged students you have by whatever categories and blah, blah, blahs. And that. The real trick to this, when you look at the formula, like there's like schools that have low ISPs, it was identified student percentage, that they don't qualify for the funding. Schools that have kind of medium level ones, 45% for example, they get partial funding. And then past a certain threshold, which is lower than 100%, it's 65%, they get full funding for all the free meals. Basically, USDA foots the bill. And then part of the application to the federal government when these districts send it up there is that they group the schools in their district together in bunches, and they aggregate ISP for the entire group. So the total percentages across the whole group is what counts for the total percentage for the group. So what's interesting about this is it's basically a slop in the formula that says, if you organize your 4 schools here, 2 are at 40% and 2 are 85%, you put the high percentages together, those guys get full funding. You put the low ones together, they don't get full funding. In fact, they don't even qualify. But you organize the other way around, and suddenly, ta-da, then everyone gets free funding from the government, and so you get more money out of the government for basically running a script. And so that's the idea. And so it's like kind of cool. We kind of joke about it being like white hat gerrymandering. Basically, can you get more money for the government for something that I consider to be good, which is free meals for kids. So anyway, so that's basically meals count. And there's a realistic example of like a naively low optimized version of Oceanside Unified versus a couple, 10 rounds of, running a bunch of optimization iterations. We see, potentially $250,000 increase in the possible funding. So, and that's Oceanside's a small district. So you can imagine that this scales up pretty quickly in terms of potential money. Now, there's many details in between possibilities here and realities. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But how does meals count fit into that? So basically, meals count. Well, first of all, it's partly a collaboration between Open San Diego, which, if you guys aren't familiar with that, that's a local group of volunteers that are here in San Diego that we basically do civic tech coding. Kind of been not really recovered from pandemic levels of attendance, but basically, if you're interested in doing some sort of leveraging your coding skills for, helping the government or helping society, whatever, surface information or anything like that, it's pretty open-ended. That's a group where you can go do that. And so it was actually originally a policy advocacy group called CFPA, California Food Policy Advocates, went to Code for America, which is a big sort of national level group that basically manages all these volunteer brigades, they call them, of volunteers who do like local stuff. And they basically said, hey, here's this thing that they went and said, hey, here's this possible optimization we can do to do good with tech people. And they're like, oh, well, we're kind of busy. And so they handed it off to the brigade. And then that's where that got picked up to it. And then so in the end, we started doing that. And part of that is really a partnership because just me, as I have no domain knowledge in this policy, or didn't at the start of this, and neither did anyone else. So it's really kind of a collaboration of me and then these different groups, the CFPA, San Diego Hunger Coalition. Actually, along the way came on No Kid Hungry, which is actually a national level organization also. So there are a bunch of nonprofits who are basically doing lobbying and advocacy on this, and they have a bunch of policy experts. and I worked with them to do meals count as both the grouping optimization product, and also really the more challenging part was actually getting the word out and getting people to use this. In terms of technically, it's what it is basically a model of this policy. I built like a Python model of this policy, and then I built a basket of strategies where we can implement different grouping optimization strategies. And then ultimately this manifests itself in a Vue.js/Python web, or like Vue.js in the front end and Python Flask and then Lambda in the back end that basically lets someone go to the website as a district, upload a spreadsheet of their district's information, they run it, and it kicks off to Lambda, crunches numbers, and pops out an optimization and just dumps to S3, and then they go there and they can manipulate it. So that's kind of the full stack there in terms of organization and membership, and all the way to implementation. So yeah, the real trick is basically that we can just group the things together, and I think I already kind of explained this. You can by going through and doing a bunch of different grouping things, you can calculate like what you get for the highest funding. But it's not necessarily always going to be the highest reimbursement. There's a lot of factors that go into it. So some places want to look for maximum coverage. They just, because the logistics are a big part of this too. So it might be great that you put all your schools, like you get the most funding, but maybe having more schools qualify is another optimization target, and that would actually let you like increase the number of schools that you have less paperwork to do for. So that has its own benefits. And then there's other challenges like Fallbrook, which is one that we worked with directly, where they're like, well, the school on Camp Pendleton has a 30% ISP because people have all military salaries there, so they're very low. But there's just no feasible way that we could basically have an optimization that came in that these groups basically got full funding, and then we left the military kids out. So whatever we do, we have to include them. So there's all sorts of interesting kind of little pathways that we kind of discovered along the way deploying this tool. So and its ideal is just put in the numbers, it spits out the best, but it turns out the best is not always the best fit for this scenario. So yeah, in terms of the actual implementation, so there's a bunch of different things. Early on there was kind of initial strategies, some simplistic ones, and they really weren't. And so my thing was like, how do I know this is optimal? I have to have something comparison. So I kind of built this whole suite of different strategies. So there's the exhaustive one, which I think there was an intern for Sending Your Hunger Coalition who wrote up basically a power set thing, which compute everyone. That like halts my Ryzen at home, my 16-core Ryzen after about 11 schools. And I'm sure if we optimize and didn't do in Python, we get to 12 or 13. But I just was like, that's good enough. So that gives you the absolute maximum, right? Because compute every single possibility. But Los Angeles has like 1,000, like 1,100 schools or something like that. So that doesn't work for a lot of schools. Like San Diego has 250. So it's actually the second largest district in the state. And then the New York City's Mayor's Office of Data Analytics, that's NYC MODA, they did like a whole like Jupyter notebook thing that they published several years before about how to do this, and they just explored it and they hadn't actually followed through with it, and they did Monte Carlo simulated annealing. Turns out that's the best strategy, although their implementation wasn't very efficient, even though it used NumPy, but don't copy data frames all the time. That's the lesson there. And then I could never get the simulated annealing. So if there's anybody who wants to test out their simulated annealing capabilities, I could never go because they had tuned all the parameters and kind of hard coded everything for New York City. Again, 1,000 schools in the district. Those parameters work for basically nobody else. I actually had these guys from Alabama who like emailed me like, we tried this one from, they were good enough. They're like, we figured out how to run the Jupyter notebook and it just didn't work for our, 50 districts or 50 schools in our district. And it's like, yeah, well, that's because it only works for 1,000 schools. So another one was actually, I worked with a Deloitte consulting team that was hired by or organized by No Kid Hungry. And they did a linear programming thing called greedy linear programming that they did use the knapsack algorithm. And that works sometimes optimal. Sometimes it beats the Monte Carlo one, sometimes not, and so that's kind of there's really no free lunch, as I realized. And then the pair strategy was just kind of a heuristic that we came up with just thinking about it. And in that one, so I guess the whole point is that there's a bunch of different algorithms that we kind of use and we kind of run a whole suite of them based upon what's optimal. And it's the whole no free lunch thing. Like sometimes one wins, sometimes other ones win. Anything below 11, just do automatically power set and we're done, and so on. So yeah, so that's what this slide says. So yeah, so a quick kind of overview of the structure of like how it's architected. So there's a Python policy model. It's a bunch of Python classes that basically just encode all the details of the policy. There's like 20 different possible rates. Hawaii actually has a different rate, and like if you qualify for this program, there's like 5 or 6 different modifiers and like all sorts of different places. So this basically does all that junk, and then you got the strategies that basically just do the raw optimizations on that. And some of them the algorithms can take into account different goals like maximizing coverage versus maximizing reimbursement, and some of them are just kind of like, we're just going to do some basics and that's it. So some of them are kind of naive. So this is how the current web app works, which is basically I got a Heroku, and sorry, this is Box and Arrow, not necessarily representative, but Box and Arrow. So Heroku is running the Flask web server that has the Python policy model, and when the Vue.js and basically, I don't know why CSV data is pointing to Python. Oh, that's because I have some base data that's loaded in. But anyway, you submit your data in Vue, and then it kicks off the Lambda task. The Lambda task runs the strategies that we've encoded in there. I've got it set to like 10-minute timeout time, and I've got like there's hundreds of people using this during like the peak season, like multiple times a week, and I still haven't actually gotten a bill from it. So Lambda is actually cheap if you're doing like small stuff. But yeah, anyway, the end result is just dumps everything to S3 as a result. There's also a command line tool. So this is when people call me up and say, hey, I'm Sacramento School District and I've got this problem, and I want to get these schools here, but not these schools, and I can't quite figure out your tool, and then I'll run it, and then I have to figure out why their data is wrong because there's all sorts of problems there, and then finally, but at the end, I just use the Python policy model and just have a command line tool. I also have a Jupyter notebook baked into it, so you can just do that, and then you can do some charts and graphs and whatnot. And then really what's been cool is that I've started working with some state departments of education, because some states, not California, have their stuff together, and they're like, it's much more efficient if we just do this for the entire state, and then we can just optimize everything and submit all the paperwork ahead of time rather than training every single district how to use this tool. And the districts have way less technical competence than the state does. So I'm working on this is what I was asking about, because at first I was like, I'm going to do an Electron app, and then like I got it going, and it's like almost 2 gigs or like 1.5 gigs to like build it. I'm like, hell no. so now I'm doing a tkinter interface, which I'm not planning to play with that, but it's kind of baked in like GUI toolkit inside Python that I've used a decade ago, and it's pretty good and pretty simple and bundles nicely with PyInstaller. But thank you to those who helped me kind of find my way towards that. But yeah, so the goal here is that the state can actually just dump a CSV of all their data in for all districts, and they can run a bunch of optimizations. They can crank the iterations up because it's not on my dime, and they can let it run overnight, and hopefully they will get what they're looking for, or at least get some information there, and I have to do less of that. So anyway, this is all MIT licensed, and it's on GitHub, Open San Diego Meals Count backend, and so it's got a baked-in Docker file, so you can just run the actual app. You do Docker goes up, you can install the front end thing. I think that actually doesn't need to be done anymore. I think I've got a build Docker container now that does that. You can also, just mess around with the back end stuff, or you can actually run just the Jupyter notebook, and that will actually pop up, and then you can have that, and you can just mess around with the policy things if you're going to do something like that, or implement a new class or optimization. So in terms of, I've said this has been going on for about 4 years. 2019, is that 4 years now? Yeah, 4 years now, over 4 years, getting past 4 years. And so it's interesting that you think, okay, that's cool. This is like the results. So I found out that we changed the Google Analytics or Google account for our Open San Diego recently to a different parent account, and so I lost my access to analytics. But here's kind of showing the analytics. So basically, people all around the country are using this, which is pretty cool at this point. This is in 2021. 2022 was busier. I just don't have access to data anymore. But basically, this is like obviously very highly qualified traffic for those in the web business. Nobody comes here if they don't know what they're looking for. And so yeah, you can see these big peaks here. We have like basically right about now, or like late spring, there's like basically all the applications are due by June and July, although I think the last 2 or 3 years have been kicked out to like September just because of the chaos of school meals it's been the last couple of years. But there's like a big spike, and then like these partner organizations do webinars, and I've been on webinars like 600 school district administrators from all over California and the country, and they're just going through and training on how to use the tool and all that stuff like that. And so you can see there's a bunch of traffic, and people run a bunch of these optimizations. But it's really cool just how many people are using this tool. And like I said, they have seasons and a lot of engagement here, but never enough to actually be real traffic in terms of like an e-commerce heavy sales day. But enough that, but it's cool with the Lambda thing. It's like basically they're like, oh, we're gonna have like 600 people. Like, are you worried about this thing crashing? I'm like, no. Like, I think Heroku can handle killing off all the jobs. It's not that much. I boosted it a little bit, but it was cool. Anyway, so kind of like what has worked. Hundreds, maybe thousands of school districts and analysts nationwide have been using this tool for the last couple of years to do this calculation. And this has actually become pretty much the best and only tool for CP grouping policy. So in the country, like there's another one by another organization called FRAC, but it does like a naive ISP like thing that's not as good. And there's actually been a lot of state departments that have like worked with me directly or used it and told me, like Hawaii, Michigan, Washington, and Colorado, and a lot of them are posting instructions on their like internal portal pages for districts. Go use this tool; it'll help you. The partner No Kid Hungry, which is NKH, there they actually had a VB script. Well, I wrote the VB script to basically ping off and do the optimizations from VB, which was interesting. So they use that, and that also distributes, and I've sometimes get that tracked with analytics. And yeah, somehow I became the expert of this one corner of this policy, nationwide policy that sort of matters, but doesn't in the context of the pandemic. So yeah, what hasn't worked is the pandemic resulted in universal free school meals, removing the need for CP, and districts all had to line up their applications. They still end up doing that because they knew that these benefits were going to expire. So I was like, yay, like we finally got what we were trying to achieve, but in reality, my tool is actually more needed now than ever before, because now that we have this, like it's going to go away. And actually, that's a reason why I'm working with Michigan and Colorado now on the state level, is because they've actually, in California, they all passed legislation that says, basically you have to use CEP to do this, because they want to make sure they get that money from that. But California's legislation, which ironically came with a group I worked with, requires the districts to actually use CEP and optimize if eligible, but nobody's actually responsible for optimizing. So basically, there's no basically the districts, they have to sign up for CEP, but nowhere to say like they have to optimize. And the California Department of Education is like, well, we're just going to take whatever that. And so basically, the sad part is that the California taxpayers end up footing the bill with less money than they can get from the federal government. So, so that's what hasn't worked. Also, to increase adoption, I made it easy as possible to upload. So there's like no user accounts. You can just show up and just run a thing with a spreadsheet of data. But I get like zero feedback from, like, I know what states are using it roughly, because they got to select what state to enter in their data. But I like actually telling me like, hey, I used your tool to do this. Like I've had anecdotal ones, like Hawaii said, hey, we decided to add 40 schools to CEP because of your tool. Like that's awesome. But like anecdotal, like how much money, like, can you tell me how much money you would have gotten in addition? Like what were the numbers? I just want to know what the numbers are. And it's really hard, despite like asking for like surveys and all that stuff, because there's really no feedback loop. And like once these things enter into like the whole government thing, like California Department of Education is like, they've got a system that does the exact calculation. I tried to find the people, so I'm like, I will help you. I'll work with you. Anything. I will like give you whatever you need to streamline your application process. If we can just like collaborate. And then no response there. And that's kind of I think some of these are the same old software lessons, that you can make software, even pretty good free software, but ultimately you just need to pound the pavement and get people to use it. And you don't necessarily find out. Another thing I found out, there's so much room for improvement in my optimization algorithms. They're all of it. Like I never got the simulated annealing working, so I'm easily getting caught in the Monte Carlo, basically searching for optimal things. And the simulated annealing lets you kind of pass a false lower peak to find a higher peak. But I couldn't get the parameters running, and I just didn't have time. So there's probably lots of like hyper optimized zones that were missing on lots of these things, but. Again, the competition is somebody, a district administrator on a spreadsheet, basically like, I think this will be good. So beating that handily. The Vue.js is absolutely terrible. I recently crossed the threshold into TypeScript programmers. So, so now I look back, I'm like, eeh. And then also it's interesting. You think you're going to deploy one way. Originally, I was thinking this is just going to be all Heroku, and then I ended up doing Lambda. And then I was moving towards like, hey, I'm going to move this to be Netlify, and so I don't pay $8 a month or whatever for Heroku. Netlify, kick it off through API Gateway, kick off the Lambda, zero serverless, all that stuff. But I just, in the end, they're like, hey, like what we really need is like someone at the state level to have a desktop app that we can just run this thing and crank it through a lot of stuff and provide aggregate results. So now I have to build a desktop app, and then I guess I won't do the serverless part, or at least not yet. So always be ready for, and make sure your core code. What's the one thing that worked really well is by having the core policy model, kind of just this patch of Python stuff, and having all these ways to work with it, I can kind of repackage it in a lot of different ways, which has been nice. And then the GovTech twist is basically like, number one is like everyone I basically who's working the software, it's just a reality. Like no one's actually incentivized to use my software whatsoever, right? So like anybody, a nutrition director at a school district, like they're basically fighting the winds to go try this new thing and sign up for CEP, because people are like, this might not work out and we don't want to get foot the bill. And like, there's nobody gets a bonus for saving their school districts $1 million. Like it doesn't happen in that space. So I just have to like love them, like, wow, you guys are amazing for taking all this risk and try to help hold their hands too much, which again is crazy because like as taxpayers, like we basically, I guess we could get all this money from the government. I guess ultimately we pay for it too, but I don't know. That's a different equation. And then also just like there's just like the crazy amount of legislation policies that are all kind of conflicting. Like the whole part with like requiring it, which is good, and then that ultimately removing any incentive to actually do optimization. It's really pretty crazy. So definitely an interesting adventure for anybody who's interested in doing that. And then also the last factor is just volunteering. So although I very much encourage all of you to come to Open San Diego, I have to admit that it's been a challenge doing this as a volunteer. We did have some great volunteer assistance. Probably the biggest volunteer assistance I had were people doing the website, which I'll show you guys in a moment, which actually looks really good. And that's a huge thing because people get confidence. If your website looks like junk, I know this just from having done websites at an agency for a long time, is that if you have a junky website, people don't trust it, and they're like, is this thing for real? But if you have a nice looking website, people are like, oh, this is legit. It's a very simple thing. Unfortunately, humans are easy to fool like that. But yeah, so having some volunteer assist to make that. But other than that, like I've had people, just try to help me with like little things like that VB script and that Excel thing. I've just tried to find volunteers. And I think part of the challenge is that it's just complicated. I mean, it just took me, 10 minutes to give you a whirlwind tour here. And like, you probably all have lots of questions or just, either zoned out or have lots of questions, totally cool and all that stuff. It's just hard to get people up. And so even if you get people on there, they're volunteers, and then it comes down to the nitty gritty that a lot of people basically bail on you. So that's challenging. But I will say that, yes, this has gotten me worthwhile consulting work. So that the benefits are real for doing this kind of volunteering and having that. Even if you've got a lot of experience, it's still kind of cool to take yourself out of your normal stripe and work on something completely different. And it's also been great talking point when interviewing. So searching for a job last year, and then also lucky to meet the people at the nonprofits I work with and interact with them. It's been a huge help. Anyway, I can talk about the code or show you guys the code a little bit, but probably not worth it since there's probably other stuff. So, all right.
Take questions though.
Yeah, I'll take questions
if you want to.
Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned currently it's running in Heroku with Lambda, but you're going to be rewriting it as a desktop app?
Rewriting is a strong term. I'm basically just writing another Python script that's gonna. So like I said, I was gonna do Electron, where I was gonna just bake because at the core policy model, I've got all the tooling to just basically feed data and it spits out results, right? So it's really kind of how do you feed the data and how do you present the results that the website does or the Jupyter Notebook does. So in this circumstance, I either unleash Jupyter Notebooks on some people who probably couldn't handle that, or I try to create some sort of streamlined thing where you pump in a CSV and then it pumps out another spreadsheet at the end. And so I think in the end, I'm going to just, for distribution's sake, so I don't have to distribute 2 gigs of Electron. Although someone just told me about Tori, which sounds very interesting. It's basically Electron, except for use native WebView, it's built in Rust. But anyway, but yeah, I was going to use tkinter, which like lets you do like old school form things and like progress bar, which all I need is a progress bar and some radio buttons and some text entries anyway. So
okay, cool. So it's not so you could make it a website. It's upload a CSV from the sound.
Yeah, I mean it is. So I'll show you. It is a website right now. Oh, except for I have no internet. Anyway, so if you go to mealscount.com, it's actually a pretty nice looking website, and you can go there and run optimizations and all that stuff. So it's all that's the part that's built in Vue.js and runs a Flask app that ultimately punts it over to Lambda.
And as a former federal employee, I can tell you getting an application is easier to get approved than a website that some blocker is blocked and no one knows who that person responsible for allowing it is. If I just say, hey, I have this executable I need it for my job, and then they run it in a standalone, like in an air gap machine, that goes, okay, looks fine, and then gives it back to you, you're in and out in like 10 minutes versus waiting an entire school year to get some website approved.
Interesting. I would say why not buy another domain? See if I do.
Well, the reason for applications is if I have a web service, I can modify that web service to do whatever I want when I want. If you have a standalone app, you can version lock that thing. So like you can only use this version of that application, and if you ever need a new version, you have to go through that process all over again.
Got it.
Yeah.
There's a process by which you try out combinations, do it running overnight, costing you try it on a desktop app, running on their computer.
Yeah,
That
it's
too.
actually not the security thing that no one's actually brought up any concern about that. It's really that basically
Of course
this
they wouldn't.
the Lambda goes back to my bank account, and so I have capped at 10 minutes. Also, Lambda can only run for so long, and so if you do have like Michigan, Detroit has 500 schools in it, and so it's a numbers game. You know, it's small schools, no big deal, but you get to 500 schools, there probably is some optimization waiting if you run it, you know, for a few hours, and so there's probably some benefit in doing that. Or if you're a state, you want to run. You know, California has 1,000 school districts, the largest of which has 1,000 schools in it. And so if you run the whole state as an aggregate, which is really what this specific desktop app is, then in that case, then maybe you want to run a couple different scenarios and you want to just kind of do that. And then, so it's really more about giving the statewide departments of education a bulk tool and analysts who aren't bound by as many security things too. But there's a lot of analysts in these nonprofit groups who actually do this stuff for the state. And they do it. So, but yeah, it's a long computation, but also distribution. You know, it's easier to do that. Yeah, thanks. Any other questions? Cool.
All right.
Well, thank you very much.
Really quick, is Sheng good here? You are? Well, not yet. Not yet. Are you ready to present? We had a moment where someone signed up last minute. Like,
Yeah. I didn't get a chance.
we just want to make sure that you have time to present. Or if you're not ready to
Yeah,
present, we
this
can push it to next month as well, whichever is easier.
Depends on your arrangement. I'm okay with that now.
We had
Okay.
somebody drop out. So.
Let's do it. You wanna? I mean, so Jeremy, you were next on the schedule, but if you are willing to yield,
Yeah, let's see. Maybe for the.
Okay. Okay.
See how much time we have.
In that case, Sheng, what up?
All right.
This is how easy it is. You know, we'll just call your name out and we're like, hey, you got something to present? Like, let's do it.
Hopefully, do you have HDMI or do you have?
HDMI is better.
Okay.
Your microphone's here. Just
Yeah,
leave it
you don't
there.
need to put it on or
Okay.
anything. You just speak. It'll pick you up. Thank you.
Probably.
Teams.
Okay. I know many people hate Microsoft.
Hey,
Okay.
Not Jay.
not me. I love it. It's whoever's
Okay.
listening.
So
Good layups right now. Great.
okay. So this is my topic on Python generated Excel files. In fact, I just call it XLSX. I have the reason. Okay. Anyway, so background. So we must to process data and generate some reports. For this case, I especially mainly those table-based reports. Why we have this kind of report? Because users like report, and also if it's something they can directly use, or especially to do some further processing, that's great for users. They will more likely to use it compared with other things normally. And also, in fact, I think many of us, maybe inside your family, you are just the IT of the whole family, right? I can believe it. So, in short, the users may not have enough scripted programming skills. For me, I'm in a hardware company, so many of them can do the programming, but most of them are using Perl, or sometimes they are using other fancy things, but most of them, they cannot do Python stuff. And also, there are many data, they just want to get the result and do some further processing themselves. So Excel is not a very bad choice. So one thing is that Excel is still widely used in the environments and even home. So we all know Microsoft is always a strong competitor in enterprise environment. And also the Office 365, they are very cheap, including 1 TB storage. Anyway, I'm not their advertisements. Okay, and also one thing is that they have the huge user base. For example, when we go to YouTube, today I just searched the top Excel influencer. It has more than 2.2 million of the subscriber for it. So that's really not small, in fact. And also Excel now, it is an open spec from 2009. It's already just the extension of this Office Open XML spreadsheet ML. Okay. So it means Microsoft will always public the standard to all to use. And not only this, in fact, the original Excel that we have used for more than 20 years, the XLSX format is also open source format, but most of the people want to be interested in that part since it's already replaced. And in fact, after its publication, there are 2 or 3 free software to allow users to read the Excel directly. So I don't know the purpose since the official Excel is still widely used and it can read the older format Excel file. Okay. Other things is, the HTML is great, we all like HTML, but Excel still has its advantage. One of it is single file. Normally, if we are on the web, it's no big difference. We are using web browser. How many files it access it's all in the backend. We don't need to care. But if someone send you an email, and sometimes if you are in a internet limited environment, maybe a single file has its advantage since when you get an email, you can directly open it at any time, up to you. And also, Microsoft has the strong support of the Excel. The XLSX format. The Excel is still a great software for many years, even now. I still remember maybe about 20 years ago when I am still using MATLAB, and Cliff Moller, the creator of MathWorks, come to my lab and mentioned that their hope is in every engineer's desktop, they will have Excel and MATLAB. At that time, it's 20 years ago. Of course, the situation changed, but most of us still have the Excel in our desktop, no matter you are using Windows or using Mac OS normally. And also, the Excel have the Microsoft has the Office web applications, so we can use it on the Linux directly. Okay, and also yes, HTML needs special things, and also currently it's better. Seems the Chrome-based web browser is just dominant, unless in the Mac OS, but Chrome is still very popular there. But we all experienced the past time that web browser has different result on your HTML page, on your CSS layout, all kinds of troubles are there. But if we using the XLSX and use Microsoft, we can get the guarantee that it's always the same layout. Microsoft also put billions of dollars on developing and improving it every year. Okay, and this thing is not my favorite, but in the company environment, we will have this case that sometimes the IT administrator or higher level manager want to add a DRM to our documents. So for the Excel, it's very easy. Just send it to the SharePoint server. Normally, by default, encryption will be done. But anyway, this is for the environment enterprise environment. It's good to use Excel since no one will complain much. The security things will automatically be solved by Microsoft normally. One issue is the Excel is the functionalities are limited currently. XLSX file are only opened by Microsoft. I understand that on the Linux we still have other software to the job, but normally we suppose it's limited by the software we use. And HTML in fact can use very fancy features because when the advanced JavaScript programming and also the DOM manipulation and the CSS styles, but it's not free since you are not only programming Python, you also need to handle those JavaScript things and CSS normally. Okay. So normally, if we have a Excel, have a table, if in the HTML, it will always have multiple files, including HTML itself, image, and those JavaScript, all those things. It's possible. I previously do have some experience to use some to pack it into the single HTML file, but due to HTML file itself is a TXT format, text format, so I have to use B64 encoding to convert the image into the B64 format to do the job, and also I have to add extra things to reduce file size. For example, when we are sending the access the web in the internet, by default, we have the zip compression enabled in the backend and our web browser. But if it's a single HTML file, I have to use the fancy JavaScript skills to make it itself a zip file. So open it, then it run the JavaScript on the web page itself and expand the extra contents and update the DOM, all those complex things. It's very complicated, but compared with Excel, it's much friendly since I only need to generate it and give it to users. That's all what I want. Okay. Then is to the real things. I frankly I do not write any Python Excel libraries at all, but I just share my experience. So one is the OpenPyXL. It has been there for many years, but the content is not so popular. One of the things is that it lacks many of the features like Spark clients and other things. But it is still there. It is a good choice, and especially if you want to read Excel and write Excel at the same time, this is the OpenPyXL is a good choice. Otherwise, you have to use OpenPyXL to read the Excel files, do some conversion yourselves, and then output to another new Excel. The second choice is not favorite, but it's always there, the Win32.com binding. So using Python to operate a Win32.com, then the Python can directly operate on several Microsoft applications directly. But there are some issues. One is that it has to require the real Excel installed on the Windows machine. So if you are running the Linux or even on a Mac with the Office installed, you cannot do anything with it. And also, most of the codes are the VBA style. I know that we love Python, so not so favorite choice. And the XLWT is also a library focused on the Python write, but it's last updated 5 years ago, so also not a good choice. So currently, we always use XLSX writer. Yeah, anyway, it has more than 3,000 stars on GitHub, and it's active development. And one of the great things is that the author, Jamaka, I think, he also creates the same thing for the C, Perl, Lua, and the Rust versions. So it means he has the motivation to learn the Excel implement the XLSX formats, detailed implementation. He has this motivation, and sometimes he may offer the support. If you pay much more money, he will make some features in advance. Anyway, I'm not for his advertisement. Okay. So let me say something. Excel I like that mainly for the XLSX writer can implement. One is the conditional formatting. We all know that in the Excel we can see some cells in green and some cells in red, no problem. And also the data bar feature is pretty good since not only show the data, it immediately give you the visualization of which kind of the data is the biggest. Okay. The formula. In fact, in the 2021, Excel started to support Lambda. Okay, this is I will talk on detail later. That's very interesting. Okay, and the chart. That's also what we like for the Excel. For example, to the expense, we know how much money we spend on. Okay, image is no problem. And one of the interesting thing is the Spark lines. I think the Spark line. In fact, Microsoft even applied for the patent for it. And it's this kind of action is scolded by many guys because the Spark client come out maybe about 200 years ago. Just most of people do not use it. Only Excel maybe in the 1990s. The software in the GUI wise, they have and the computer have enough resource, they can do this thing on the real time. So the Spark Client, they applied for the feature. For me, why I think Spark Client is the hidden treasure of it, because when I generate a table, the table, one sheet may include this kind of Spark Client, maybe thousands of it. So it's for me, I only need to list the data, and Excel will generate this Spark Client very easily. And it's also clearly shows the data trends. Another important thing is the Spark Client itself can be just, we can change the raw height into high enough, so we can directly show this thing like the histogram directly. Of course, you can also show the chart directly, and it's something like no noise, means no legend or something. But it's not so good normally. But if I have thousands of this kind of charts, you understand what data represents, then this is not a bad choice. So this is why I use XLSX exclusively for many of the features. And when many fancy features can be implemented by the VBA, the Visual Basic for applications that Microsoft developed for many years. You know, some of us know the rumors that Microsoft may replace the VBA with Python. Yes, I hope so, but I don't know. Since, in fact, Microsoft, for example, when I searched the Lambda, I realized that the Lambda is developed original from the Microsoft research from Cambridge. They have several guys learning different functional programming language and propose these things. And this Lambda, in fact, they have the original ideas about 15 years ago, but they originally synced with Excel PM. But at that time, the PM think this is great, but no resource since he's just a PM. Of course, after so many years, the PM just becomes the Microsoft the product unit manager of the Excel, means he has the biggest right of the Excel. So now all these things come out. And with this Lambda things comes out, it also means Microsoft may not willing to spend much money investments on the Python. Anyway, we can see the future of how it goes through. Okay. So I want to share some experience. So one is that Excel, since when we do the job, I sometimes, if it can be done by formula, I always like to use formula. Why I use formula? Because user can reproduce, can understand how I generated this data directly from the raw data to the final result. And I needn't spend any effort to explain to them. But to the formula, when it's in the company environment, sometimes if you send through the Excel, through the Outlook, it's not so good because by default, you open the file from the Outlook attachment, it will do not do any calculation at all. The solution, of course, one is that we can generate the result directly, but that's not what I like. And also ask user to save that to the local to open the file again. Then all the formula will be calculated. Since Excel worried about those malicious formulas lead to all those loop calculations or too much calculation power. So this is what they do the defense for Excel. And also the VBA, the XLSX writer can implement with advanced VBA to do the job. But the VBA is, due to the historic, those notorious VBA macros lead to all kinds of the Windows machine, infections for 15 years ago. So VBA is not enabled by the system administrator. Even Microsoft does not enable it by default. So it's a history issue. And in theory, Microsoft they can categorize those VBA functions. They can summarize, for example, if the VBA function only do the calculation inside the table, do not access outside the file system, it should be fine and safe. But Microsoft seems has no motivation to do that at all. I don't know. Anyway, the Excel is already the market standard, but the VBA is not. Okay. And also, as I mentioned, the Lambda, 2 years ago, Microsoft put the Lambda inside the Excel. But it's only supported from the Office 365, and maybe Microsoft released the next the Office 2022. Maybe it will include Lambda. It means that we can create functions without VBA. Without Lambda, what we can do those complex functions, we have to use VBA to do the job. Otherwise, it means that one cell will be very lengthy to save the formula itself. And the problem is that you will hundreds or thousands of the cells in the similar formulas. Excel itself is saved in the Excel, saved in the XML and in a zip file. That will be huge waste of the file size. So with Lambda, we can easily reduce file size. And meanwhile, Microsoft can do the optimization for the Lambda function implementation. Since they know the Lambda, what it is doing, they will internally compile it into much faster implementation than original formula ones. So this is also good things for the Lambda. And I do use this to reduce file size about 6 to 8%, depends on which kind of Lambda I use. Yes. Okay. I think that's all. Hope users can use, we can use Python to do the Excel if you really use Excel to do other works. Okay. Thanks.
Do you want to take questions?
Yes. Yeah. Any
Okay.
questions? No problem. Yes.
So I haven't used Lambda before. It sounds like a new feature. Does that let you write Python functions that you use yourself? Or
No. The Lambda itself is still Excel function. To implement the Lambda itself is something like other programming language, like in Python. You have to Lambda internally use other Python functions to do the job. In Excel, it's using other Excel functions to do the job.
Oh, okay. So it's not VBA, but it's chaining Excel function.
Yes.
Okay.
But the good thing is that the function, it only be you only need to write once, and you can use thousands of times to save file
Sure.
size and accelerate it.
So you can basically have nested some function, parameterize it.
Yes, you can parameterize it. Yes, but not as advanced as the Python Lambda or so C++ Lambda implementation, but it's still good enough.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
I guess I'm going next.
Go next.
Jeremy?
You want me to be last?
Okay, cool. So I will not be taking any questions on Excel or or its involvement with Python. Yeah, I'm not here to talk about that. By the way, for those that haven't been to any talk that I've given before, this is going to be participatory. So if y'all don't say anything, I'm just going to stand up here and look stupid for 15 minutes, all right? So let's start with this. How many people here use VS Code? Okay, everybody else, can y'all entertain me for a little bit, okay? Because we're going to be talking about VS Code. There's going to be Python involved, but it's mostly VS Code stuff. Oh, cool, it did the thing. All right, cool. So disclaimers out of the way. I'm Jay Miller. I'm Senior Cloud Advocate at Microsoft. Again, I work with Azure. I don't work with Excel unless I have to. And I will say, although I do get paid to often talk about VS Code, everything that I learned that I'm going to show you, I learned on projects that have nothing to do with my job. So this was me learning for the sake of learning and sharing for the sake of sharing. And again, your last warning, if I'm up here again next month, y'all are getting how to give a conference talk or how to give a lightning talk or how to give a 30-second talk. We're talking about making a TikTok conference. I might show you how to make a TikTok. We will see. Don't try me. So, oh, I forgot to change the name on my slides. We're just going to be talking about tasks. We're not going to be talking about the debug stuff. I was going to do both. I fell down a rabbit hole. I had a lot of fun doing so. I stayed up till 3 a.m. and now we're here. So how many people here have used tasks in VS Code? Great. I love it. Put your hand down. I'm kidding. So when you're operating in VS Code, often, how many people have seen that .VS Code folder that pops up when you create a project. Okay, you might be wondering, hey, what's in there? What stuff is Microsoft throwing in my projects to make it easy for them to, I don't know. We're not doing any of that stuff. Basically, we're putting 3 files in your project, and we're putting them inside of a nice little folder called VS Code. There is a mysterious 4th file called dev containers. That's a different talk that I'm giving at Southern California Linux Expo in March. So you can come check that out. Settings, we're not talking about that today. You want to make your Coded Explorer look really cool and do a bunch of cool stuff? Settings is where you do that. Launch, that was the debug part of this talk that we took out for time. And then tasks. Tasks are my jam. I love tasks. And as I studied about this, I love it even more. Basically, tasks give you the ability to execute code that maybe you don't remember how to write. If you're like me and it's JavaScript, npm run dash, well, I don't know. It's something like that. So it's great for doing things like that. VS Code does some auto detection fun stuff to make that happen. We don't get as much love on the Python side. That's okay. I know the developers were working on that. And we can also build our own tasks to do things that we want to do. And I'm going to show you one that I built yesterday. So tasks, as I mentioned, integrate with tools, run scripts. There's more. You can set a default task. I'm not going to show you how to do that, but it is possible. It is a single command. The tasks.json file is just that. It's a JSON file. That means everything is plain text. You can see what you're setting. You can see what it's outputting. And we're going to look at a couple of examples of my task.json file for a project and see where it takes us. Again, if you want to do the JavaScripty things for the commands that you can't remember the name of, it's got things built in for gulp and grunt. I didn't even know grunt was a thing. I was like, what is grunt? That sounds weird. But hey, JavaScript, I guess. And also, you can quickly run tasks from the sidebar. Asterisk, you need an extension for that. There's plenty out there, but I have one that I recommend. I did a YouTube video on it yesterday. If you want to check that out, go to my YouTube channel. Or you can run it from the command palette, which I will also show you. There's actually 2 ways you can run it from the command palette. I'll show you how to do both. So with that, we're going to go straight into the demo. But before we go there, I'm going to show you what we're working on. This is my website. Whoa, this is not my website. PowerPoint, what are you doing? Stop. You know what? Oh, wrong window. I'll show you. This is my website. It's pretty plain. We've done some fun stuff with this. Again, go check that out. Shameless plug. Now, let's see if I can stop my presentation. And let's see if it's going to... Yeah? Okay, cool. All right, so right now we're on a blank screen. How many people here know what pip is? Okay, good. If you don't know what pip is, that's where you install your Python packages into your project and make things happy. How many people know about version pinning? Less people. This is good. Okay, so pip does a lot of things to help prevent you from doing things that are slightly dangerous. This is a good thing. So one of those things is if someone's working on an alpha version of their project, then if there's that alpha flag there, you won't download it unless it is literally no other full version available, or if you specifically say, I want that alpha version. And you do this by stating whatever version you want. The reason this is important is because I am also a package maintainer. I have too many packages on PyPI that are all based on toys that I made for me and nobody else, but that's fine. But I'm often working on packages and packages that support other packages. So why am I saying all of this? This is important because if I go, how many people here know what pip tools is? Nobody. Yes, I get to show you the fun. This is great. I love this. Do people know what a requirements.txt file is? Okay, how many people's requirements.txt file looks something similar to like that? Don't worry about the words on it. Pretty simple, not a lot of stuff going on. How many people have like requirements.txt files that look like this, where you got things that are via other things, understanding how other things talk to other things, and pointing to those other things over there. So pip tools is a really cool tool that's maintained by a company called Jazzband that is like the island of misfit Python packages. Basically, Python developers are like, I can't maintain this anymore for whatever reasons. Jazzband says we have tools and resources that we can donate to maintaining it for you, and then they take over it. Go support Jazzband. It's a really amazing project, and the people that work that do this work are really helping to keep the Python ecosystem alive. I say all of that because they have this tool called pip tools. Pip tools is a really interesting tool in that it allows you to write that and compile it into this, which gives you all this information and tells you about all of these things that you can do. And you maintain it by running the magic command. That magic command, let me slide over here. Y'all can see the screen, right? I'm not blocking it. Okay, cool. So that magic command, there's a few of them. We're going to do it the smart as suggested by Heineck way, which is Python -m pip tools, which is the module, compile. Now, if we wanted to upgrade all those packages in that short file, we would do --upgrade. And optionally, you can do requirements.in, but if by default, it's going to actually, yeah, it should do it by default. And what that's going to do is that's going to load everything. It's going to give me this nice warning because of some stuff. And it's going to show you the new output that is very similar to what's in here. It's actually the same. Now, I've said all of that because this is using the normal pippery of things. If I don't give it a package version, it's going to load whatever is the last stable, you're right, getting code from me, stable with asterisk there, version. How many people know how to import a package that is locally on your machine? Someone say it out loud. Pip install
Directory -e.
So there's two ways you can do it. There is -e, then the directory, or there's just the directory. Does anybody know what the difference is?
Yes.
Yes, so -e edits it in place. That's important to know. So if I have a folder that's 3 directories over there, and I do something that edits that package, I'm editing that folder over there. Versus if I just do pip install on the path, it's actually going to copy that package, decompress it, put it in my library file, and then any changes that I make, I would be making to that smaller package. So what we're going to look at is, why does J have so many packages here? As you can see, most of these say render engine something. So render engine is the main package. Everything else is a plugin for that package. If I make a change to render engine, I then have to go and make a change to all those plugins, potentially. Who sees a problem with this? Okay, I'm not going to ask you what the problem is, because the answer is J needs to figure out how to develop code in package environments. But it's really hard when I then go and publish all of this stuff to PyPI to remember what packages I had to go and modify. And then I'm stuck working on old unmodified code when I publish it publicly. So I did what most Python developers do. I asked Twitter, but only after I wrote a command line package. This isn't on PyPI, don't worry. I'm not going to pollute that anymore today. But this is just a typer script that gets the current package on my computer, because I do change the versions in the actual package once I write the code. It gets that version number and compares it with this version number, and if it's wrong, it overwrites it. So really simple Python package. I'm going to show you how that works, and then I'm going to show you how we get back to tasks in just a second. Actually, I'm going to, let's see. Let's just remove that, and we'll remove that. I come in here. I go to this. I type in, I don't have to do the -m because this is a local script. I just do version sync py, and we're going to do check. We do check. It's going to say, hey, Render engine doesn't match none, but all these other ones are up to date. That's cool. Now, as you can tell, I've tried doing this a couple of different ways. I've said, pip or Python and -m or just pip install. There needs to be a consistent way to do this. And the answer is you use tasks. So now we're going to go to the whole reason we're here. Let's go to tasks.json. Let's get rid of you. Let's expand you a little bit. So this is what a task. This is a really big task.json task, and it's really not even that big. It's only running one command, and that command is this. Does anyone know what that does? Command : python.interpreter path. Yeah, it looks up the Python interpreter path of my current VS Code workspace. That's important because VS Code has a way to automatically detect a virtual environment in your project. So whether you are in your virtual environment or not in your virtual environment, if you just put Python, you might get a different result. So if you do this long command instead, you always get the interpreter of your workspace. So then we give it some args here. If you've ever worked with subprocess, you understand like when you put arguments, you have to put them in a list and then each field has to be its own. I'm going to tell you, you don't necessarily have to do that. You can just put all of it in the command as well. It works. Don't know why both of them are like that or why there's one or the other. They both work. Do whichever one you're most comfortable with. To me, it depends on the weather. Okay. I like it.
Yes, it can work, but it can also fail horribly and make your life.
I don't like that. So
No one likes it.
Yeah, so args seems to be the appreciated way to do it then. All right, you have a problem matcher. Problem matcher will actually look at your output and look for problems, and if there are problems, it will tell you there are problems. There isn't one for Python. I checked. Brett Cannon, prolific Python developer and all around, I'm here for the community guy, says that it's on their to-do list. It's been there for 5 years. So yeah, moving on. Presentation. How does this show when we run it? And echo the command in the terminal, yes. Reveal the problems if they exist, yes. Change the focus from my code editor to the actual output, no. Create a dedicated panel or just use whatever the last one was open. Dedicated panels for the win. And a bunch of other stuff. Clear, it clears. So that's, all of this is a task, but it's not all necessary. Really, the only thing you absolutely need are these three things here. The label, the type, and the command. Again, we've already talked about you might want to throw some args down, not bundle them all up. But if you're worried about how do I even know how to format this, these are the three things that you need at the bare minimum. There's also some metadata at the top, version 2.0, and then tasks and a list, and then your tasks go in the list, and it's in a dictionary. So if we run this, I told you I was going to show you a few ways to do this. If we run this, we can open up the command palette. I did that with Command P on a Mac. Don't ask. If I can type in task like that in space, it will automatically show me what tasks I have in that JSON file. Build site's going to do just that. It's going to build. Actually, we're going to say we're going to run server instead. We're not going to run server instead because apparently, oh no, it's doing it. Ruff just yelled at me about some stuff. So it's rebuilding my site. My site's a static site generator. So yeah, it built all that stuff. It built it. We're down there. Go. I think I talked about that last month. We click on the button. The local version of my website comes up. Everybody's happy. That worked. But if you notice, I didn't have to remember the command, which is really the important part here. Don't remember commands. Just push the button, type what you're looking for. As I've gotten older, I've learned. I'm getting dumber slowly but surely. It's remembering words is easier than remembering commands, so I'm going to stick with the words. So again, we do this again. Actually, we're going to do it a different way. If I do Command Shift P, I can go to task, run task, and then you can see the same options here. I'm not going to do build site. I'm going to do, I don't have those yet. We'll do the check local dependencies thing. This is what happens when you don't put a problem matcher in. You get another prompt. We don't want that, so we're just going to say, okay, same prompt that you're used to. So now, I gave you that long command for how to run piptools compile and piptools sync. We're going to build that right now, and we're going to throw a little bitty curveball in the mix. And then after that, I'm going to sit down and let Jeremy get on stage. So let's exit out of that, exit out of that. Cool. When you're adding a new task, you can add it at the top, at the bottom. Doesn't really matter. It starts as a dictionary. What are the 3 things? Stop it, Copilot. Hold on. There we go. I'm gonna turn off cheating because Copilot's really helpful, except for when you're giving demos for this thing. I don't really want to disable it globally. I'll just rename it later. Okay. All right. So now we have an empty dictionary and it won't be autofilled. What were the 3 things that we needed? Someone yell one out. Okay, one person yell something out. Command, I like it. So we're going to do a command. What was that command? Does anybody remember how to compile using piptools? The Heineck way? Python-m piptools, correct. Compile -- upgrade, perfect. That is the command. What's wrong with this already? The answer is on the screen. There we go. We got to use the command substitution. So we're going to remove Python and we're going to replace it with $ command : see, again, type so hard. I miss Copilot already because it would have just been like, oh, you mean that thing? Yeah, I got you. Interpreter path. There we go. There we go. So again, this will work. What else? What else do we need? A label. We're gonna call this. Naming is hard. What should we call this? Maybe. Pip.
Need a label, not a label.
Oops. Sorry, I'm cheating and trying to move ahead here. Label. Piptools. Piptools. Yeah. Upgrade. There we go. Let's add a colon there because it does have to be valid JSON, or JSON, as some people, Raymond Hedinger would say. Okay, we're missing one thing. Type. Thank you. I was going to say I typed it earlier. Type. So if you look in the autocomplete here, there's a whole lot of options. Python isn't one of them. I'm just going to take this time to gripe about that. File issues. VS Code is actually an open source project, and we do look at the issues, and the issues that you submit, the community, get priority over the issues that I, as an employee, submit. So, file issues. Thank you. That's my PSA. Python doesn't exist, so we have to use Shell. Thank you. You can use script, but then you have to supply a script. So then we have to move all of the command into a shell file, or shell script. And then, you might as well just do the thing. That is a good observation, though. If you're doing kind of a lengthy thing, maybe putting it in a script is a better idea. But most cases, I just use shell because it's like one-liners that I just tend to forget the commands to. So this should work, right? We think it's going to work. We're going to hit, actually I said I would show you the other way. I'm going to exit out of presentation mode. And there's going to be this little bar thing here. This is called Task Explorer. Task Explorer is a third-party app by Scott Meeson. What does it do? It puts the Explorer, ignore those broken Shield.io image links. It just puts a little icon over here. And that icon brings not only your actual shell scripts, not your shell scripts, your tasks, but it will also look for shell scripts and other Python packages and other executables in your directory. So for my dev containers, I have some bash files here that I can run. If we just click on them, I'm not going to, nope, go to the file. Yeah, you can look at them here. It's just a remove output folder thing. Yeah, so you can do all that. I really like this tool. I will warn you, it gets a little greedy. If your virtual environment is in the same folder, it will find every single Python file in your virtual environment. There's a lot. If you want to learn how to fix that, go watch my YouTube video. Thank you. Anyway, we're going to go here. We're going to find, we see pip tools, something, pip tools upgrade. We run that by hitting the play button. And on the side, we see the same warning that we're used to getting and an updated requirements.txt file. But wait, there's more. We're going to do one more, and then we're calling it a day. So, let's exit out of that. Let's go back into presentation mode. There we go. We want to do something called a sync. And piptools has two basic commands that you'll use. You'll use piptools compile, which will do that. It'll convert your requirements.txt file. It'll do that upgrade. And then sync will actually go and download all the new updates into your system, into your environment. So, what do we need? Label. Okay. We're going to call this piptools sync for consistency. Also, let's throw a comma here because, again, it needs to be valid JSON. We need what? Type. Okay. Type is going to be, thank you. And before I say what we last need, I want you to look at all of these other things that you can provide. You want to throw an icon in there? Throw an icon in there. You want to run the background? Let it run the background. If you have a different command, depending on whether or not you're using Mac OS, Linux, or Windows, you can put them in those files. We're not going to talk about that because I'm working on the system that I work on. All of my computers, except for one at home, are the same platform because consistency. So we're going to just put command. And also, in Python, usually the command for one is the command for all of them, unless you're dealing with like some file stuff, and then attribute values tend to get a little wonky. Or if you're working with Excel, shout out to Sheng on that one. So, I said all that. We need what? Sorry, we have label, we have type. We need what? Command. All right, so we're going to add command. And I'm not going to tease y'all again. I'm just going to do the same. Command, Python, enter. I really am missing. I have rheumatoid arthritis, so like I try to conserve keystrokes. So, and then for that command is going to be something dark side. There we go. Pip tools sync instead of compile. Now, this was Oh, thank you. There's one more that we need, and I'm going to tell you why. What use is updating your requirements.txt or updating your environment if you haven't updated your requirements.txt? If only there was a way to run one task before you run the other task. Technically, you could just throw 2 ampersands on the end and then run the second task on the end. I used to do that. Don't do that. There's a better way. Does anybody see it on the screen? Depends on. Yes, perfect. Depends on means that before this can run, it will run something else. You can actually have it run several things, not just one thing. But we're going to say depends on pip tools upgrade. Also, that's why you don't make your labels really long, because then you got to type them again. I don't know. Let's find out. Probably shouldn't say that when you're doing a live demo. Do we see our pip tools sync? There it is. Did it run? It did not run, so apparently it must be case sensitive. Let's find out. Replace that, save it, do task, pip tools. Oh, there was one more. Command-Shift-P, it just puts the little greater than sign there. That is a different command in the command palette. I don't have time to explain that. There's another thing you can do, which is task, rerun last task, and it will run. Oi. What are we doing here? Yes, I did save it. Okay, yeah. Apparently when you run the last task, it runs an instance of the exact task that you ran the last time. Instead of, so if you make any changes, you can't run it again. But what we should see here is it ran that file, and then it ran that. Okay, yeah, so we do see it running pip tool sync. Everything is up to date. Now, again, I lied about being almost done here. I do promise this is the last thing. We're gonna write one more task. Actually, sorry, I already wrote it. This is the typer script that I wrote that ultimately updates this. And as you can see, this render engine value is still incorrect. I want you to keep your eye on that because that's the only one I'm changing now because I don't want to break anything. Task. We're going to task, not tasks. Update local dependencies. We hit OK. We hit OK. Type versions is not defined. Uh-oh, Jay broke something. Really quick. Tasks. Down here. Update local dependencies. Task. Doing the same thing twice is just called insanity. Requirements update. Something. Okay, well, I'm not going to show you that because apparently I broke it in the 45 minutes before this meetup started. If you want to see that work, come see me after the talk. But ultimately, it's just going to go back and add that version back into my requirements.in file, which is why I started down this rabbit hole to begin with. Was people forget, and we can't forget that people forget. So the cool thing about this is if you notice, no keys, no API keys, none of that stuff. We're going to be safe. We're going to practice safe tooling. But when you're working in GitHub, when you are a package maintainer or you are just a good manager, you want to equip your team with all the tools that they need to not have to piddle around with what's the command to update my requirements and stuff. Throw a task.json in your package and say, hey, all the build tools are there. And again, I would say the next time I'm up here, I'll show you how debug works. That's a lie. The next time I'm up here, I'm showing you how to give a lightning talk. Thank you. And I can take questions. Sorry.
Just one.
Just one question.
Like, it's already 8:30.
Oh, is it really?
It is.
My bad, Jeremy.
No. Let's see. So, the talk that I gave is to fill up the rest of the time. So, if we're running out of time, next time.
I'm used to going either first or last. So.
I don't have to make sure that you don't.
Perfect. I like that deal. So one question. Any one question?
Depends on, is that do like chain tasks? Chain more than
Yes. You can do a couple of things. You can use depends on and chain tasks, but you can also use depends on order or depends order to specify should this task always be ran first or always be ran last in your task chain. So yeah, that's actually a good question. I learned about depends on literally like 2 hours before the meetup, so I was super excited about that myself. All right, thank you.
So Jeremy, are you really okay if we postpone your talk to next month? All right. Well, awesome.
Do you need my computer?
No, I don't need
If
anything.
anybody does want to talk with me about interviewing, let's say you're going through the interview process right now and you'd like to talk to me afterwards, I'm hanging around. So.
Cool. Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for coming. Please do sign up to be a speaker at a future meetup. Thank you for coming. There is still, I think, some leftovers in the back from that.
I don't take food home, so it needs to disappear.
Yes.
I don't care how.
Please eat as much as you can. And thank you for coming. I think some of us will probably head to O'Brien's, which is like a little pub and eatery down the block. I have to clean up for a little bit, but maybe around 8:45 or 8:50, we'll probably head over there. Thank you for coming. Oh, and I want to. Sorry, one last thing. I just want to thank our speakers who all took time to prepare good talks for us, and I want to thank our sponsors. JFrog, Ansir, who provided the venue, and Microsoft for providing the food. So thanks. Awesome. Yeah, I'll tidy everything up. Thanks. Yeah, I will. I'm gonna end the stream. All right. Oh yeah, just put them in the corner.